Get rich fast with csgofast.com.
So we're here at the DreamHack Masters Malmö, the third day, and we have a special guest here with us. Not a player, it's Nix0n from DreamHack. So just for the beginning, for people that don't know you, can you just tell us a bit about your role in the company and what you do?
Sure. I mean, originally a part of the esports team at DreamHack. We've evolved that a little bit, so a little bit more of a product focused right now, where I have two positions. The one people probably know me most for is project manager at DreamHack Open, since that's been running for a few years. Since last year, director of DreamHack Masters as well. I want to say, in general, pretty similar roles. It's very project management related. With DreamHack Masters, it's a little bit more, shaping the product and, looking at, okay, how do we want to portray that product in the future and so on, where Open is more, project management. But in reality, they're very similar, keeping strings together and making sure we have a good product.
Okay. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about and just bring some insight to the casual fan or the more interested fan is like the organizer side of the whole circuit of CS. So where I want to start is like last year, I think it's October 2016, you put out the whole schedule for this year of the open events, and I think there are some hints about when the Masters were gonna be held. So just tell me about like the climate at that point and what you're thinking you're gonna accomplish with that, and like the whole idea developing.
Sure. I mean, I think anyone can attest to it, seeing how the current landscape is, that a lot of stuff pops, I don't want to say randomly, but more like short notice and if even any notice. And I don't want to say that we are holding back some stuff and not announcing it in good time. I mean, there is some stuff that we are out pretty late with, but let me get back to that later. I think initially when we are planning our next year, I mean, we're already planning ahead for next year and deep into that. We want to have a good perspective of what are we doing as a company, both for internal reasons, but also for partners, sponsorships, sales, but also I think it's important for the community. I think when we put out this list, it was just cards on the table. It's like, this is what we have next year. It's pretty easy for everyone to, plan for. And so forth. So I think from a pure planning perspective, we saw this is only going to benefit us, but anyone else in the industry as well, when the events are. Of course, there are some, buffer in that area where you said, we gave indications for where the Masters events will be. But in general, I think we had good notice around when those dates are. So in general, I mean, it comes down to planning and making people aware. And I mean, now when you travel to Malmö, it's good to know it a few months in advance, right? So you can, travel sort your travel accordingly, or get off from work, or whatever it might be. So it comes down to planning and scheduling.
So then the year started. I think you kicked it off with Leipzig, and probably the first competitive event after the E-League major or something, or before. After that, how did the whole thing develop? Because we've seen a lot of overstepping of different tournament organizers. How's the communication been with those other parties in the scene, and what were the biggest difficulties?
Yeah, I mean, I think some people know it, some people don't, that there's a group conversation between most CSGO organizers in there. I want to say some are more transparent and cooperative than others, without throwing anyone under the bus. But I think in general, most try and play with as much open cards as possible. And so when you start getting these overlaps, first and foremost, I mean, for anything in the world, I would like to avoid it. You could argue that when we play out the 12-month calendar that we have, that okay, then we've put our stuff out there. Then how people decide to schedule their events, I mean, I don't know all their reasonings either. I'm not necessarily asking for that either. It could be venue dates or whatever it might be. But obviously when the two major qualifier blocks rolled in, seeing how Valve wants to do it now with being a little bit more condensed in terms of how long it spans over, and even more so that it's one operator doing all in the major cycle, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, it also comes down to planning there, because if you have an entire year that's already mapped out, in this case from our point of view, like look at the calendar, where do you fit that major cycle into? It's problematic, for sure. So I mean, it's unfortunate that there had to be these clashes, but we also, from our side, see it as being, I don't want to say okay, but we, to some capacity, accept it, because at the end of the day, we have two different products. DreamHack Astro Open right now, which is 8 teams, it's 9 events, it's 100K events. Then we have DreamHack Masters, 16 teams, it's arena events and 250K or over. So it caters to different tiers, I want to say. With DreamHack Astro Open, you see some tier 1 teams attending, but mostly also, well, what should we call them, tier 2 and below. I mean, even some up-and-coming teams who just get destroyed. But what we feel is important is that they have a playground where they can kind of evolve as a team. So, of course, I would like to be without all these clashes, but at the end of the day, DreamHack Astro Open, I think this year has again served as a good playground for everyone. So, yeah, there's no denying it's been unfortunate, and I would love to be without it, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're not just catering to the tier 1 teams. We also think of the entire community as a whole. In my vision and the company's vision is, if we start, closing it all down, then how do we create the stars of tomorrow? How will the new up-and-coming teams have a chance to play if they can't qualify, or vice versa? Yeah.
So one of the things you touched on as well was the major cycle, and for you in particular, the major itself, like, lined up with 2 of your events, and that came like as the announcement came when the announcement for the major itself came, which meant that this event, probably you're hoping that it could be potentially a major. So with all that happening, how has the communication been, and what are your thoughts on the whole process of getting the major? Is it transparent enough? Is it fast enough to have tournament organizers plan ahead, or would you like something to be maybe changed or maybe done somehow differently in the future?
I think bottom line is that I think planning could be way different. At the end of the day, I mean, it's up to Valve how they want to do it. It's their product and their IP. So, but I think from a pure planning perspective, and especially seeing how the scene is now, I think not just us, but I think the scene in general would benefit from a little bit more planning in advance. Let that be 12 months, or if it's 6 months, I don't know. At times it just feels a little bit short notice to some capacity, and of course it's going to get ugly in some way or shape now when you have so much stuff already planned out, and then all of a sudden you have to put a major cycle in there. So yeah, I would say as an industry or as a community, we would benefit from generally better planning. I understand in general that there are some complication that doesn't necessarily always allow for this, but yeah, better notice and better planning. If it's a 12-month period, we just know, okay, here are the blogs that we would like certain stuff to happen in. Sure, then we can start relating to that. When it's just bulldozing in across on top of stuff that's already planned, as I've said so many times, I mean, it's unfortunate, but in this case, it's been our DreamHack Astro Open events that's been impacted, and they take place at our festival events. And our festival events is much more than just Counter-Strike. Of course, Counter-Strike plays a vital part in that, but our festivals will not get cancelled due to that reason. That there's another event overlapping. So yeah, I'll say it again, it's unfortunate, but I think we made the best of it given the circumstances.
Okay, so touching on Valve, and one of the things you have been doing differently is the rule set. Most particularly is the coaching rule. Ever since it has been added like a year and a half ago or a year now, you've been sticking to the old rules. Now you have made somewhere in between the Valve and the old rules. also overtime rules and different things. So can you just tell me a bit about your thinking about having different rule sets and why you decide to have things a certain way?
Sure. I mean, I think bottom line, we feel that the industry in esports in general is still young. We still have, let's call it, time or the ability to try out different stuff or figure out where do we land on certain things. I would say that sure, rules and rule sets and regulations to some capacity needs to be better streamlined. I think that will benefit everyone, both tournament organizers and teams and players. But going a bit into detail was that when initially the change was announced in terms of coaches, we were just figuring out, okay, what is coaches in CSGO? They've only been in the game for so long, right? Where they could talk at all times. And going back, I want to say, yes, I think that was too overpowered, but that was just how we started. And where we are present day, it's still, sure, time has passed, but it's not really that long of a period. So when Valve announced how they portrayed the coach situation, I think we partly agreed in the capacity of it needs to be the players that play the game. I completely agree with that. But there was two matters in this reasoning behind why we didn't implement it first. Was that one, we didn't necessarily agree to the full extent that this is how it was supposed to be. And number two was that we feel that it's important to have a infrastructure that supports these coaching rules. And what do I mean about that is that initially I think a lot of organizers were, without knowing to full extent, manually muting, unmuting and stuff like that. And there are certain fault groups when you do it like that, human error and stuff like that. So I don't think that was optimal. I think it has worked okay. But so primarily that we didn't necessarily agree with how it was done and having an infrastructure that's supporting it. So now, before Malmö, we rolled out the new way of our take on coaching, implementing in the game, which was, as you said, an alteration of the current Valve game, but adding that they're allowed to speak in freeze time. And what was the reasoning behind this? Well, it's a bit like I said, I think the coaches should still be communicating with the teams, but it should be with the players, and it should be the players that play the game. That's still the case. It's a little bit more added talking time and communication time that they have with their coach. But when the round starts, it's the 5 players that have to do the decision making. Sure, they can have a plan with the coach in the freeze time, but if they have to adapt or change something during the round, that's still the decision making from the actual 5 players. We've talked with players, we've talked with coaches, and we've talked with some various people on the team's front and got their feedback, what they think about it. And initially they also asked for some other requests here and there, which was, some had a theory that they believe that extra timeout should be added going into overtime. There were some other cases as well, but where we said, okay, we feel that's a little bit too much. Like you have the 4 timeouts per match and you use them as you see fit. We rolled this out, and again, it's to see how does it work. Does it stick? Is it good enough? Is it too overpowered? I mean, we will evaluate that. We feel that as it is right now, that's something that we are comfortable with, and we feel is right. It's still the players playing the game and making the decision making. And on top of that, we now have an infrastructure and a system that not manually, but 90% manually or automatically, I should say, does all the muting and unmuting and so on, reading directly from the game. There's most definitely been a couple of hiccups here in the beginning, since it was the first time that we tried it live in a pro tournament. Of course, we've been testing it. We've sorted those things out, but it's also that the system reads from the game. So if there are certain limitations within how you can read the game, then we meet those limitations, and we have to sort that out. So I mean, I'm looking forward to hear the feedback from teams and players and see what their take has been on both the rule implementation, but also the system and the infrastructure of it. Okay,
so one of the rules you've complied with the Valve ruling is the banning of players or not allowing players that have previous bans. So ESL recently changed their stance on that to a degree. Can you tell me just about your view on it, both the previously VAC banned players and the match fixing players?
I think again it's a similar case where with a lot of the other stuff is that we're so early in esports and in CS:GO in general, is that we're only finding out rules, regulations, and vice versa, not just in the game but also outside of the game. And so previously I think the approach from all tournament organizers has been just to lean up against if you have a ban, okay, then it's lifetime, right? And then you can't play. So it's most definitely been figuring out the right way to approach this. And it's complex. I think we all can attest to it. It's complex, and you need to have some proper framework to support it. And that hasn't been existing. I want to say we're getting there, but it hasn't been existing, and it's very complex. Even more so when you have one organizer having one set of rules around it, and then you go to the next one, it's different. This is where I would like to see a bit more unified rules across organizers, right? So for now, I mean, as I said, we've been leaning up against this. Okay, if you have a ban, you can't play, and vice versa. But I mean, we're looking into having this framework and support from other entities where, not that we don't want to make that decision, but also just again have a consensus with other people. Is like, okay, what are these rules and regulations that we should have for, match fixing or cheating or rules and regulations in general. I think that's going to benefit. It's going to benefit everyone, because then okay, if you do these things, then here are the consequences. In the past, it's been if you do these things, okay, it's just lifetime. There wasn't even rules back then, right? So it's just been. I can understand that people are a little bit confused about it because there's not been any rules around it. But I mean, getting back to my point, we're still in a space where we're figuring out a lot of stuff. So we'll get there.
Okay. So this is your second Masters event of the year. As far as I know, it's the last one. You're gonna end out the year with the open events, and after that, I mean, you're already, as you said, already planning for the next year. What are you hoping for? What are your goals? Is there anything like set in stone, or something about the 2018?
Without spilling too many beans and getting in trouble with any upper management, the planning is most definitely to still have two sort of products that we can cater to. DreamHack Masters in its core right now, it's the world's best teams. It's stadium events, and it's the bigger prize pool and the top tier. We still want to have that event, and planning for again 2 events throughout the year, one early in the year and one a little bit later in the year. And I think I've said it numerous times that I believe with DreamHack Astro Open is that we still want to have that playground for teams to play. It doesn't necessarily have to be all the best teams every now and then. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best casters. I mean, we need to have something like this product in my book, because otherwise it gets too tier 1 focus, and then we will kill our grassroots. So I mean, Open is still on the planning board for next year. It's a vital part of our festivals. So depending on how our festivals will take place throughout the year, I think people should expect Open to always be a part of that.
Okay, yeah. Just to end it off, is there anything you want to say? Any special messages, or maybe something you want to put out there for either the community or like other people in the scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fun times. We're having a good time in esports, and it's most definitely also to the efforts of the community. I mean, if the community doesn't like what we're doing, if they don't show up to our events, then I mean, then we have to look at, okay, what are we doing well or doing bad? So yeah, props to the community in general. I've been in the game for a long time, so it's a new age of the community. I don't think there's necessarily too many of the old guard left from the good old 1.6 times. But yeah, I mean, we listen, we observe at all times. Not necessarily always agree with the community, but it's most definitely important to always have close taps with these people, because at the end of the day, as I said, it's the guy that visits HLTV.org. It's the guys that shows up here in Malmö. So without those guys, I mean, similar to what the players say, then we're nothing, right? Outside of that, yeah, it's been a good year so far. I think we've had some good events. We've had some I want to say ups and downs here and there. I mean, I think in general we are a well-oiled machine and we deliver good events. So yeah, looking forward to the rest of the year and looking forward to the playoffs here in Malmö Arena starting tomorrow. Should be a cracker of a show. So yeah, thanks.
Okay, that was that from Nix0n from DreamHack. Third day of DreamHack Masters Malmö. We'll probably get back to it, more content, so stay tuned to HLTV.org.